She stood with her back straight while the words still rang in her ears. Sterile. They had said it like a verdict, like a door slamming shut forever. Her fingers tightened around the ticket. She did not cry. Not here. Not now. Leaving was supposed to feel like freedom. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something final. Behind her, footsteps crunched on gravel. Heavy. Certain. A man stopped a few paces away and spoke softly, as if afraid she might break. "You really leaving this place behind?" She did not turn. Not yet. Because if she did, she might not leave at all. The frontier station sat crooked against the mountains, worn down by wind and long winters. Rough timbers. Rusted nails. A single platform stretched beside the rails like a tired spine. The afternoon sun hung low, throwing shadows that felt longer than they should have been. The woman stood near the edge, her posture rigid with practiced dignity. Her dress had once been dark blue. Now it carried the color of dust and years. The cuffs were frayed. The hem-brushed boots that had walked too many lonely miles. In her hands rested a battered leather valise. Everything she owned fit inside it. A spare blouse, a book of lessons, a folded letter offering work far to the east, and the ticket, one way. 4 hours she had waited. 4 hours while townsfolk passed without meeting her eyes. Some pretended not to see her. Others looked too long, as if confirming she was truly leaving at last. She had come to Pine Hollow 8 years earlier, with hope tucked carefully in her chest. A school teacher's post. A fresh start among the peaks. She had believed work and kindness would be enough. She had been wrong. When the doctor spoke the truth, his voice had been flat and final. He said her body would never carry a child. The word spread faster than fire in dry brush. Her fiancé vanished within weeks. His family said he deserved heirs. The town agreed. From that day on, she became something else in their eyes. Not a woman with lessons to teach or hands to help. Just a warning. A failure, they whispered at church. They stared at the schoolhouse door. Mothers began keeping their children close, as if her presence might infect them with sorrow. Then the council spoke kindly while taking everything from her. For the sake of appearances, they said. For the girls, they said. So she saved. She endured. She bought the ticket. Now the distant whistle echoed through the valley, bouncing off stone and pine. The train was coming. Behind her, boots shifted. Gravel cracked again. "You planning to board that eastbound?" the man asked, "or just watching it leave?" She closed her eyes. She knew that voice. Everyone did. He was the mountain man. Elias Crow, the widower who came to town only when supplies ran low. A man built of silence and weather. He had watched everything from the edges. And said nothing. "That's no concern of yours," she replied. Her voice did not shake. It stopped being anyone's concern years ago. The train's sound grew louder. Metal on metal. Steam, breathing somewhere beyond the trees. For a moment he said nothing. Then, slower. "Maybe so, but I couldn't let you go without saying what I should have said before." Quote, against her better judgment she turned. Elias Crow stood tall, shoulders broad beneath a hide coat worn smooth by years of snow and sun. His beard carried threads of gray now. His eyes were pale and steady, but today they held something heavier than cold. And beside him stood 2 girls. Twin daughters, no more than 12. Identical braids, matching solemn faces. Each held the edge of his coat like an anchor. The sight struck her breath from her chest. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly. "You watched them tear me apart. You stood there, silent." His jaw tightened. "I know." She took a step back. "Your silence told me everything." He looked down at the platform, then back at her. "I was wrong. I've been wrong for 8 years." The train rounded the bend. Black smoke rose into the sky. The ground seemed to tremble. She turned away again, facing the future she had paid for. "There's nothing left for me here." "There's something left for me," he said, his voice roughened. Something I can't do alone. She felt it then. The weight in his words. My girls, he continued. They lost their mother 3 winters ago. I've taught them how to track, how to survive, how to stand strong, but I can't teach them how to be held when the world is cruel. She swallowed hard. They need a mother, he said simply. The cruelty of it cut deep. Of all people, asking her, of all moments now. You don't know me, she said, spinning back to face him. And this town made it clear I'm unfit for that role. He met her gaze. I know what they said, but I also know what I saw. You loved those children you taught. You never stopped. The conductor's call rang out. Final boarding. Passengers began moving. Bags lifted. Doors opened. She looked at the twins again. One clutched her sister's hand. The other blinked back tears she refused to let fall. Her fingers trembled. The ticket bent in her grip. You broke something in me, she whispered. All of you did. Elias nodded. I know, and I can't fix what I failed to do, but maybe we can build something new. The wind caught the edge of the ticket. The train hissed. She loosened her grip. The paper slipped free, danced once in the air, then vanished beneath iron wheels. The train began to move. She did not chase it. Silence followed. Long, heavy. 4 figures stood on the platform as the sound faded into the mountains. Finally, she spoke. If I stay, she said, her voice steady now, it will be on my terms. Elias waited, and the twins held their breath. Elias did not interrupt her. He did not rush her. He only nodded once, slow and solemn, like a man accepting terms he knew he had no right to bargain with. Say what you need, he said. She drew in a careful breath. The mountains stood quiet around them, as if listening. I will not be pitied, she began. Not by you, not by your daughters, not by this town. I have had enough of lowered voices and careful looks. That won't happen, Elias said immediately. I will not be treated like hired help, she continued, or like some temporary fix. If I stay, it is because I choose to, not because I have nowhere else to go. He removed his hat, holding it against his chest. You'd be family, nothing less. Quote. She studied his face, searching for falsehood. She found none, only resolve, and something else, regret, that ran deep. Slowly she looked down at the girls. They had not spoken a word, not begged, not reached for her. They only watched, eyes wide, shoulders tight, as if braced for disappointment they already knew too well. What are your names? She asked gently. The girl on the left swallowed. I'm Lila, she said, and this is Hannah. I'm older by 7 minutes. Hannah nodded, as if confirming an important fact. She crouched, so they were eye level, the ache in her knees forgotten. 7 minutes matters, she said softly, especially when you're 12. A flicker of surprise crossed Lila's face, the smallest hint of a smile. The conductor called again. Louder this time. Elias glanced toward the train, then back to her. If you say no, he said quietly, I'll understand. I won't stop you. She rose slowly. I'm not saying yes, she said. Not yet. Hope dimmed slightly in the girl's eyes. But I'm not getting on that train, she added. The change was immediate. Hannah gasped. Lila reached for her sister's hand. Elias closed his eyes once, like a man holding back a storm. We should leave before dark, he said carefully. The trail's easier with light. She hesitated. Where do you live? 9 miles up the ridge, he replied. Timberline cabin, creek nearby. It's solid, not fancy. I don't need fancy, she said. He nodded and turned toward the hitching post. 3 horses waited. One was already saddled for her. You were prepared, she said, arching a brow. I hoped, he replied simply. The ride-up was quiet at first. Pine shadows stretched long across the trail. The air cooled as they climbed. Lila rode close, glancing at her every few minutes like she might disappear. Hannah followed just behind, careful and watchful. You can ask, she finally said. Lila's eyes widened. Anything. What do you like to read? She asked. Poems, Lila answered quickly. Papa says they're strange. They're not, she said. They're brave. That earned a grin. By the time the cabin came into view, dusk had painted the sky in gold and violet. The structure sat sturdy in a clearing, logs darkened with age. Smoke rose from the chimney. "It's beautiful," she said, surprised to mean it. Inside was warm, simple, clean. A large table, an iron stove, 2 small bedrooms. The girls rushed ahead, eager to show her everything at once. Elias stood back, uncertain now. "You can take the girls' room," he said. "I'll move to the loft." She nodded. "We'll talk more tomorrow." That night she sang. She did not plan to. The song came from somewhere old and quiet, a lullaby her mother once used. The girls listened without moving. When the last note faded, both were asleep. She stood in the doorway longer than necessary. Later, on the porch, Elias spoke softly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving them hope." "I didn't promise anything," she said. "No," he agreed. "But you stayed." Sleep came slowly. Thoughts crowded in. Doubt, fear, possibility. Morning brought sunlight through unfamiliar windows and the sound of laughter. The girls waited for her at the table, books open, expectant. "Do we start lessons?" Hannah asked. She smiled. "We do." Days passed, then weeks. The girls bloomed under routine. Lessons in the morning, chores in the afternoon, stories by firelight at night. Elias watched from the edges, never intruding, always grateful. Then came Sunday. "We're going to town," Elias said. Her hands stilled. "I don't know if that's wise." "It's necessary," he replied. "You won't hide here." The church fell silent when they entered. Whispers followed. After service, a woman stepped forward, eyes sharp. "Interesting arrangement," she said. "A woman like you." Before she could respond, Elias stepped in front of her. "She is under my roof," he said evenly, "and under my protection." The woman flushed and backed away. Something inside her shifted. That night, she stood on the porch, stars bright overhead. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I should have done it years ago," he replied. She looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, she wondered if staying might mean more than survival. Behind them, the cabin glowed warm and alive. And inside, 2 girls slept soundly, dreaming of a future that suddenly felt possible. The first real test came on a night when the wind would not settle. It rattled the shutters and crept through the cracks in the cabin walls, carrying the smell of snow, even though it was only early autumn. The fire burned low. The girls had gone to bed hours earlier, worn out from lessons and laughter. She sat at the table mending a tear in Lila's sleeve when a small cry pierced the quiet. "Mama!" The word was soft, uncertain, almost accidental. Her needle slipped from her fingers. She stood so quickly the chair scraped against the floor. The sound carried upstairs, and Elias appeared at the loft ladder at the same moment she reached the girls' room. Hannah was sitting upright in bed, her face pale and slick with sweat. Lila hovered beside her, eyes wide with fear. "She's burning," Lila whispered. Her hand was already on Hannah's forehead. Too hot, far too hot. Elias crossed the room in 2 strides. "I'll ride for the doctor." "No," she said firmly. "It's dark. The trail's slick. You'll lose time." He froze. She met his eyes. "Trust me." He hesitated, only a second, then nodded. She moved with calm she did not know she possessed. Cool cloths, willow bark steeped into tea, quiet words spoken low and steady. Hannah whimpered once, then reached for her. "Mama," she whispered again, stronger this time. She swallowed hard and took the girl's hand. "I'm here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." The night stretched long. Lila dozed in a chair, waking every few minutes to check her sister's breath. Elias paced once, then stopped, his worry filling the room like smoke. Near dawn, the fever broke. Hannah's breathing slowed. Her skin cooled beneath her touch. She sagged against the bed frame, exhaustion washing over her all at once. Elias's hand came down on her shoulder, steady, grateful. "You saved her," he said quietly. "She saved herself," she replied. "I just stayed." When she woke later that morning, sunlight spilled across the floor. A small weight rested against her arm. Hannah sat beside the bed, clutching a cup of broth with both hands. "Papa said you didn't sleep," she said. "That's all right," she answered, brushing hair from the girl's face. Hannah studied her, then spoke with careful seriousness. "Does staying up all night make you a real mother?" The question landed deep. She chose her words slowly. "Being a mother isn't about birth," she said. "It's about choosing to care." Hannah nodded, satisfied. She leaned forward and hugged her tight. From that day on, the word stuck. "Mama!" It echoed through the cabin, through the meadow, through her heart. With it came change. The girls grew bolder, happier. They argued over chores and laughed at mistakes. They learned faster than she expected, soaking up every lesson like dry soil after rain. Elias watched it all in silence. His eyes softened. His shoulders eased. One evening, as they shelled beans on the porch, he spoke. "You've given them something I couldn't," he said. She kept her gaze on the pile in her lap. "They gave me something too." He nodded. "I know." Winter crept closer. Snow dusted the peaks. The town became distant, both in miles and memory. Then Elias brought up something she had hoped to avoid. "We should make it official," he said gently. Her hands stilled. "People talk," he continued, "about you, about us, about the girls." She exhaled slowly. "Let them." "I don't want you vulnerable," he said. "Not again." She looked at him then, really looked. "You're asking me to marry you," she said. He did not deny it. "I'm asking if you could ever see yourself as my wife," he said. "Not for appearances, not just for the girls, but because you want to." Fear rose swift and sharp. "I can't give you more children," she said. "No sons, no heirs." He shook his head. "I already have a family." She searched his face for doubt. Found none. Still, the past pressed close. Memories of rejection, of walking alone. "I won't be pitied," she said quietly. "Never," he promised. "And I won't be blamed for what my body can't do." "Never," he said again. She closed her eyes. The fire cracked. The wind sighed through pine needles. "Yes," she said at last, but slowly. Relief flooded his features. Spring returned before the wedding. The church that once judged her filled with cautious smiles. The girls stood proud beside her. When the preacher asked who gave her away, Lila spoke first. "We do," she said. "She's our mama." Laughter rippled through the pews. Later, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, she stood on the porch with Elias, now her husband. "You glad you stayed?" he asked softly. She thought of the train, the ticket, the woman she almost left behind. "Yes," she said, "more than I ever imagined." Inside, two girls laughed, their voices carrying into the twilight, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. Marriage did not change the mountains. They remained sharp and watchful, unmoved by vows or hope. But it changed the house. The cabin filled with a different kind of sound. Not just footsteps and wind, but voices layered together. Laughter carried through open windows. Disagreements ended in smiles. Even the silence felt shared now, not lonely. She learned the rhythms of being called Mama. The word came at all hours, when Lila needed help with a stubborn line of poetry, when Hannah burned her finger on the stove and pretended it didn't hurt, when both girls burst through the door after chores, breathless and bright-eyed, eager to report every small triumph. Mama meant trust. Mama meant expectation. And sometimes, Mama meant fear. The town noticed the change before she did. At first, they watched from a distance. Whispers followed her down the main road. Not the sharp ones from before. These were cautious, curious. She returned to town only when needed. Supplies. Church. A rare visit to the post. Each time, she held her head high. One Sunday, a woman approached her near the steps, older, stern. "I was wrong," the woman said, stiff and quiet. "About you." She nodded once. She did not invite more. Not all apologies were necessary. Some came too late. Life settled into something steady, until the night the storm came. It rolled down from the peaks without warning. Wind howled like a living thing. Snow fell heavy and fast, erasing the trail in minutes. Elias had not returned by dusk. She stood at the window long after the girls were asleep, watching the darkness swallow the path. "He'll come back," Lila said softly from the stairs. She turned, surprised. "You should be in bed." "I know," Lila said, "but Mama, he always comes back." She wished she shared that certainty. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Her hands clenched at her sides. Then came the knock. Hard. Urgent. She opened the door to find Elias swaying on his feet, snow crusted in his beard, blood dark against his sleeve. Her breath caught. Inside, she moved fast. Too fast to think. She cleaned the wound, bound it tight, whispered reassurances even as fear clawed at her chest. "You should have waited," she said, voice tight. "I couldn't," he replied through clenched teeth. "The traps were buried. I had to clear them." She pressed harder. "You don't get to be reckless anymore." He met her gaze. "Neither do you." The words lingered. He healed slowly. The girls hovered like anxious birds. She slept lighter than before, waking at every creak. For the first time since staying, doubt crept back in. Not about the girls. Never them. About the future. One morning, Hannah asked the question she had dreaded. "Mama," she said carefully, "do you wish you had babies like other women?" The room went still. She set the bowl down slowly, chose honesty. "I wished it once," she said, "for a long time." "And now?" Lila asked. She smiled softly. "Now I have you." The girls exchanged a look. Something passed between them, unspoken but understood. That afternoon she overheard them whispering near the creek. "She chose us," Hannah said. "I know," Lila replied. "That means more." Spring pushed winter away. The garden returned. She planted rows of beans and potatoes. Flowers, too, always flowers. Watching things grow grounded her. Then came the letter. It arrived unexpectedly. A clean envelope. Eastern stamp. She stared at it a long time before opening it. A school in St. Louis. They had filled the position, but offered another. Higher pay. Respectable housing. A life she had once planned. She folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. That night, she did not mention it, but Elias noticed. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm thinking," she replied. He did not press. The girls sensed it too. Their laughter softened. Their eyes followed her closely. One evening, she stood alone at the edge of the clearing, the stars sharp above. The wind carried distant train echoes in her mind. Footsteps approached. "You don't regret staying," Elias said gently. Not a question. "No," she said, "but sometimes I wonder who I would have been if I'd gone." He nodded. "Wondering doesn't mean wanting." She leaned into him. "I'm afraid of failing them." He rested his forehead against hers. "You already saved them." She shook her head. "Saving isn't the same as forever." The girls burst from the cabin then, breathless and excited. "Mama," Hannah called, "there's someone coming up the trail." A figure emerged from the trees. A woman, thin, tired. A child clutched at her hand. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, uncertain. The woman spoke first. "They said you might help." She looked down at the child, saw the same hollow fear she once carried. She felt the weight of choice settle again, not as a burden, as a calling. She took a step forward, and the future shifted once more. The woman at the edge of the clearing looked like she might turn back at any moment. Her coat hung loose on her frame, patched and thin. The child beside her clutched her hand with both of his, knuckles pale, eyes too old for his small face. She walked toward them without hurry. "Come in," she said gently. "You're safe here." The woman's shoulders sagged with relief so sharp it almost hurt to see. "They told me you'd understand," she said. "That you'd know what it's like." She did not ask for the whole story, not yet. She knew that kind of pain needed time. Inside, she set a kettle on the stove. The child hovered near the door, unsure. Lila crouched to his level. "I'm Lila," she said. "This is Hannah. Mama makes good bread." Hannah nodded seriously. "And better soup." The boy's lips twitched. A start. They learned his name was Thomas. His mother had died in winter. His father worked the mines 2 valleys over. The woman who brought him had been a neighbor, overwhelmed and desperate. "I can't keep him," the woman said, voice breaking, "but I couldn't leave him alone." She listened. She always listened. "We'll help," she said simply. The woman cried then, quiet, grateful. That night, Thomas slept on a pallet near the fire. Lila tucked a quilt around him with care. Hannah placed a wooden horse beside his hand. She watched from the doorway, heart tight and full all at once. Later she sat with Elias on the porch. The stars were bright, the mountains breathed steady. "You didn't ask me," he said softly. "I didn't need to," she replied. He nodded. "I'm proud of you." She exhaled. "I was afraid you'd think I was taking on too much." He looked at her. "I think you're doing what you were meant to do." Thomas stayed longer than planned. Days turned into weeks. His shoulders eased. He began to laugh, to ask questions. The cabin adjusted. Another place at the table. Another pair of boots by the door. The town noticed. People came with cautious steps and softer voices. A woman with a sick baby. A man asking advice for his daughters. Each visit chipped away at old judgments. One afternoon, the woman who had once spoken cruelly at church stood in the yard, hat twisting in her hands. "I was wrong," she said. "About you. About what makes a mother." She waited. "I'm not asking forgiveness," the woman added, "just saying it out loud." She nodded once. That was enough. Spring bloomed into summer. The garden thrived. The children helped weed and water. Thomas learned his letters at the same table where Lila and Hannah had once sat so eagerly. One evening, as fireflies blinked in the meadow, Hannah asked quietly, "Mama, is Thomas staying forever?" She considered the question. "That depends," she said. "On what he needs, and what we can give." Hannah nodded. "I hope he stays." Lila smiled. "Me too." Thomas said nothing, but he moved closer. That night, she lay awake listening to the cabin settle. Elias breathed steady beside her. "Do you ever miss it?" he murmured, half asleep. "The life I planned?" she asked. "Yes." She thought of the letter still tucked in a drawer, of classrooms far away, of quiet independence. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not enough to leave." He squeezed her hand. The next test came sooner than expected. Thomas fell ill one morning. Fever, shallow breaths. Panic rose fast. She acted without hesitation. Cool cloths, herbal teas, steady hands. The girls watched, wide-eyed. "He'll be all right," she said firmly. To them, to herself. The fever broke by morning. Thomas slept, safe. As dawnlight filled the room, Hannah whispered, "Mama, you're not like other mothers." She smiled tiredly. "How so?" "You choose," Hannah said, "every day." The truth of it settled deep. Weeks later, Thomas's father arrived, tall, exhausted, grief etched into his face. He stood awkwardly at the door. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping my boy." She nodded. "He's a good child." He hesitated. "I can't take him yet. The work, the travel, he needs stability." She looked at Thomas, who watched from the corner, hope and fear tangled together. "We'll keep him," she said. "As long as needed." The man's eyes filled. "I don't know how to repay you." She shook her head. "You don't." After he left, Elias wrapped an arm around her. "You're building something," he said. She leaned into him. "I didn't set out to." "You never do," he replied gently. "You just show up." That summer, the town held a small gathering in the clearing. Food, music, laughter. People who once whispered now danced. She stood back, watching the children chase fireflies. Lila taller now. Hannah confident. Thomas laughing free. Elias slipped his hand into hers. "You changed this place," he said. She shook her head. "It changed me." Later, as the stars returned, Thomas tugged her sleeve. "Mama," he said, trying the word carefully, "can I call you that?" Her heart stilled. "If you want," she said. He nodded. "I want." She pulled him close. And in that moment, the last shadow of the word they once used for her lost its power completely. She was not what they had named her. She was what she chose to be. And tomorrow she would choose it again. Autumn arrived quietly, as if not to disturb the life that had taken root on the mountain. The leaves turned first at the edges, gold, rust, deep red. The air sharpened. Mornings came, with frost clinging to the grass and breath turning visible before the sun crested the peaks. She stood at the window one morning, watching the children move through their chores. Lila taller now, confidence in her stride. Hannah steady and thoughtful. Thomas trailing behind them, no longer afraid to take up space. Mama, they called her. Easily, naturally. The word no longer startled her. It fit. Life was not simple. It never had been, but it was honest. There were still looks in town, still whispers now and then, but they no longer cut. They slid past her, like wind against stone. She had learned something important. Not everyone deserved her pain. One afternoon, as she worked in the garden, a group of women approached, hesitant, unsure. One spoke. "There's a family in the lower valley, a widow, 2 girls. She's struggling." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Bring them." The women exchanged looks. Surprise, relief. "You would take them?" one asked. "After everything?" She met their gaze. "Because of everything." That evening she told Elias. He listened quietly, then smiled. "I never worried you'd say no," he said. She arched a brow. "You're awfully confident." He shrugged. "I've watched you choose people every day. Why would today be different?" Winter came early that year. Snow closed the high trails. The cabin stood, wrapped in white silence, smoke curling steady from the chimney. Inside, life carried on. Lessons by firelight, bread rising near the stove, laughter breaking through long nights. The widow arrived just before the worst storm hit, thin, exhausted, 2 girls clinging to her skirts. She opened the door wide. "You're welcome here," she said, "as long as you need." The widow wept openly. The girls stared in wonder at the warmth and light. The house adjusted again. Another bed. Another place at the table. Another story added to the growing collection. Late one night, as the children slept, she stood on the porch with Elias. Snow fell thick and silent. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked. "The station?" She nodded. "Sometimes." "Do you wish I hadn't stopped you?" She turned to him. "Do you?" He smiled faintly. "Every day I thank God I did." She leaned into him, the cold biting at her cheeks. "I thought my life ended there," she said. "On that platform, I thought I was walking away from nothing." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You were walking toward this. You just didn't know it yet." Spring returned again as it always did. The town held a gathering in the clearing below the ridge. Music, food, children everywhere. She stood among them now without fear. A woman approached, young and uncertain. "They say you help," she said. She smiled. "We try." The woman hesitated. "I lost my mother. I don't know how to be one." She placed a gentle hand over the woman's. No one does at first. That night, as the fire burned low, the children gathered close. "Mama," Lila asked, "were you sad before us?" She considered the question. "Yes," she answered honestly. "Very." Hannah frowned. "Are you sad now?" Quote. She shook her head. "No, now I'm grateful." Thomas leaned against her side. "For us." "For you," she said. "And for myself." Elias watched from across the room, pride softening his eyes. Years later, people would say the mountain had changed. They would say the cabin became a place of refuge, a place where children laughed again, where women learned they were more than what the world decided. They would say a woman once called broken had built something whole. She did not care what they said. She knew the truth. Her worth had never been missing. It had only been waiting. Waiting for the moment she chose to stay. Waiting for children who needed her hands, her voice, her patience. Waiting for love that did not ask her to be anything other than who she was. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the children play. Elias came to stand beside her. "You happy?" he asked. She nodded, sure and calm. Yes. She thought of the train she never boarded, the life she never lived. And she knew, sometimes the path you plan is not the one that saves you. Sometimes the thing the world calls a flaw becomes the door to everything that matters. She turned back toward the cabin, where voices called her name. "Mama." And she went to them. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.